Hello and welcome to Game Changer Live, brought to you by Connors Coaching. We created the show and our growing community to bring topics about positivity, coaching, personal development, mindset, and more to the front of the conversation. We go live because we believe it brings the most authentic and unedited version of ourselves to you. And we start on Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with occasional guests. And today we are joined by a guest, Lynell Shattls. Shattls. Oh my gosh, I should have gotten that pronunciation before we started. Help me here.
Shattles.
Okay. So Lynell is sorry about that. And that's why we go live, because you get to see us in all of our glory. um, Lynell is a transition coach. She works primarily with women clients. She's gone through multiple moves. She's changed careers. She's added family members and lost loved ones, and she's become an entrepreneur. So she knows what she's talking about when she's talking about transitions. But Lynell, I think it's most useful for us to hear from you in your own words. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Daniel said, I am a woman of transitions. When I reflect back on my life and kind of see where I've come from, it's been one transition after another. You can't see that as you're going through it, but when you reflect back, you see lots of that. So yes, I've had moves. I've moved away for college. I moved again after college, moved from Pennsylvania to Maryland, out of DC. I started off in accounting. I switched to human resources. I then got my master's, got married, started our family. Actually, I moved companies. That's another story. Moved companies and then started the family. Had some losses, which just changed the trajectory of my career. Then started HR consulting, became a wellness advocate. I'm an active duty military spouse. So then the moves start happening as my husband's career gets higher and higher. Throw in a pandemic that changes things, and throw in the fact that I was like, yeah, I'm playing small. It's time to become the official coach, even though I'd been doing that for years. So that's a little bit about me. And so, I was traveling down this path, kind of these twists and turns and all kind of blindly, which is what led me to say, you know what, there's got to be a better way. And that's why I have such a passion for working with those that are going through transitions themselves. So yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about your typical clients. I mentioned that you primarily work with women, but tell us about those women.
Yeah, so they're typically mid-career professional women who are going through a transition. I tell people I meet them at the intersection of career and life, because I don't believe that there can be separate. We are a whole person, and so the two of them come together. I sprinkle a little bit of wellness on top just for kicks, because that makes the whole thing come together for me. It's what made me just feel like I could be more in tune with myself, is throwing in some wellness, but bringing in my HR days, bringing in my life experiences and who I am today. These women come to me when they're stuck and they're like, I don't know what to do. I've been wanting something for years, quite literally. There's people that are like, I'll ask them. That's one of the intake questions. How long have you been thinking about this? And the common answer is years. And so something has given. Sometimes it's hitting the rock bottom. So the pandemic happened. That hit a rock bottom for a lot of people. And so they're like, something's gotta give. We have these kind of mountains and valleys, and oftentimes I meet people in the valley just to
Yeah.
bring them back up again. Yeah.
Yeah. And we all have those dips in our lives, even week to week, we have those kinds of valleys. So it's always useful to have someone else to be a compass to show you the way back up the mountain.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so you, I love this. When you were talking to me about your episode today, you mentioned this book um, called We're Going on a Bear Hunt, and that you use that kind of as a metaphor for your coaching journey. And I'd love to hear some more about that. So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when we're talking about it, this story goes, it's like, this family is going on a bear hunt and they declare, yeah, we're not scared. And they're going to go through this, they end up going through these obstacles, and it includes a river, includes a snowstorm, a muddy river, or like swamp. And suddenly they start to get a little bit more scared. And at each point, the family realizes there's more obstacles, and they're like, "Oh, I can't go over it. I can't go under it. I must go through it. And my voice changes because I read this story over and over again to our three daughters. I loved it. I loved the way it just kind of rolled off my tongue. I mean, they might not pick it off the shelf, but inevitably I'm like picking it off the shelf. And now I'm referring back to it years later, because I love this whole idea of that we get kind of, it gets tricky and we get kind of stuck. And it's like, I love listening. It's like, oh, a river, a deep, cold river. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. Oh, we've got to go through it. And so, like these children in the story, we look for ways around, but the truth of the matter is we've got to go through it. And so that's something that I really work on with my clients is like, we got to go through it. We can't, if we're avoiding it, we're not making that change. We're just here stuck in the mud, stuck in the muck, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oftentimes there is something that we're avoiding when we have that stuck feeling or that overwhelm kind of creeping up on us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I think, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
go, no, please keep going.
I was just saying, I think that what triggered a lot of times during the pandemic, I mean, a lot of us saw that we're just stuck. We're like, what do we do? Like they closed us down. We have to wear these masks. We can't go out. We can't do, and we're just feeling stuck and lost. And the truth of the matter is the pandemic is a big thing that comes up for us with transitions, but we're always in transition. We're always facing something of how do we get to the other side, whether it's, kids are moving schools or changing schools, or we're, getting in a new relationship or getting out of one, or we, have life brought into our lives through babies, or we lose people that are really, powerful in our lives. And so there's these transitions and how do we get there? But the truth of the matter is our life, like I explained with mine, it's just stacked one on top of another one. So we've got to get under like that rug. That's the biggest thing too. I mean, I always use that kind of analogy of like lift up the rug. What have you thrown underneath there? So that we can go under that and kind of start to figure out what it is that we're kind of hiding, maybe a little bit, and what are the feelings? What are the thoughts? What are these beliefs that we have? So one of my favorite authors is Brene Brown, and she talks a lot about this story I'm telling myself. And so I say that all the time, and I have friends that have read that and so like, what's the story I'm telling myself? What's this inner conflict? What's the story I'm making up in my mind? And so, I work with clients a lot of times just, to figure out what is the story I'm telling myself.
Yeah, oftentimes that in that moment of being stuck, you feel lost. And I know that that's an important metaphor for this story as well. Because sometimes we end up somewhere and we have no idea how we got there or how to get out. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, you'll hear people say oftentimes, like, start with the end in mind. And I laugh and I look back at my life. I'm like, if I reflect on my past, I had no idea where I'd be at this age and this stage in my life. But what I do with clients is say, like, look back and let's get some breadcrumbs. Like, look at those past, like things that have happened, where we've struggled, where we've succeeded, and kind of try to pull things apart, because that's where even myself, when I would try to tell people, I'm like, okay, I went to school for accounting, and then I switched to human resources, and I got my master's, and then I worked in wellness, and then I'm, officially in coaching after coaching women through wellness struggles. And I would look at that and I would be trying to explain myself. I'm like, oh, but then I started seeing this common thread, and where I loved community, where I love supporting people, where I love the analytics and using my brain and number crunching and bringing all of that together. So that's what I really love to do with my clients, is just to go back there, go through the muck, go through the mud, go through that dark forest. And, it might be kind of painful sometimes, and that's not my intention, but with that pain comes gain, where we're able to figure out some things of, kind of what worked. It's almost a little bit, and people will ask me, what's the difference between therapy versus coaching? And I heard this analogy recently. It's like people said, recovery and discovery. So recovery is kind of the therapy, and the discovery is the coaching. And so we might step our toes back in there a little bit. And that's where I call, like, going into finding those breadcrumbs, figure out that a little bit of like what made us who, where we can build up some confidence, and knowing where we've had success in the past. So it's a little bit of dance. And you could definitely go through this therapy and the coaching together, hand in hand, if need be, just to help move forward. That's my goal, is that we move clients forward. We might step back, but we maybe slow down to go fast, and to gain some momentum. But if we just go forward, that's not, in my opinion, that just doesn't work as well, because we haven't reflected backwards yet.
So you kind of mention that sometimes in the analogy of the story, you mentioned the breadcrumbs, looking back at the trail of
Mhm.
breadcrumbs. Tell me more about that. What does that look like for your clients?
Yeah, so we're looking at, like, what worked and what didn't work, what brings them joy, what sucks the energy out of them. It's a big thing. It's like when somebody says, "Oh, I really can't stand that." Like, I'll give them always the example of, I was an accountant. So what happened when I went to human resources? I was always given the budget, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want that." So like, don't list budget on your resume if you don't want to do budget. Like, people don't know that you've done that, but just really tap into kind of what has worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, and what you really enjoy. And the biggest thing to think about with this whole journey is that you're not going out on it alone. Like these kids and their parents, they were on this bear hunt, but they weren't alone. And that's the thing that I tell people too. That's why you go to a coach, because we can help you, work through those things, ask you those questions, and help you to kind of have an insight and maybe a lens that you hadn't seen before, because somebody else can see it a little bit differently. So we help you to discover maybe these things that you never even noticed, this theme that was going on in your life, of what you really enjoyed and what you didn't enjoy.
Yeah. Um, you mention you mention at one point when the children kind of come in contact with the bear the first time.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I think that's a really powerful metaphor. So if you wouldn't mind taking us through that part.
Yeah. So what happens when they initially find the bear? I mean, they've gone through the mucky, the river, the swamp, the all of the things up and over, and going through it. But when they see the bear, they're really scared and they run back. And this happens to us too. It's like, oh, you might say, "Hey, I want this career change." And then I get the interview and like, "Oh no, maybe I don't really want it." And I'm gonna like not lean in anymore. I'm gonna lean back. We really get scared of this thing, because what's happening is this is right outside of our comfort zone, right? That's where that growth happens. It's outside of our comfort zone. That's where the change happens. And so we get scared and we run and we retract. But what we do is we learn some things along the way as to what's happening. And so that's where, as a coach, I'll go in there and start asking them, "What's going on for you?" I mean, I had a client that one time, she was looking to switch careers, and I said, "Let's look at your LinkedIn profile." And she was like, "Oh, I don't want to use LinkedIn. I don't want to use that for connecting with people." I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, why not? But this for her was not the right thing. And so we had to understand what was triggering for her, why this was scary. And why it's scary for her is because she's a person to person type of person. Too many persons in there. People person. But she wanted to connect with her people. She liked that, referrals, which is, I love that too. I mean, as a coach, that's the biggest win for me. If somebody says, "Hey, working with Lynell changed my life, you should go work with her too." But that was just getting underneath that and understanding for me, kind of on paper. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you put this up there? But hers was like, this seems so impersonal, that this feels like, so she got scared when she was going out there and it didn't work for her. So, we kind of work through like what's coming up with you, what happens when you're having these feelings.
Yeah. Wow. So this metaphor is a really awesome tool to talk about the kind of personal journey that someone might be going through when they're stuck. What kind of other tools as a coach do you pull out of your toolbox?
Yeah, yeah. My clients will say I have like a magic toolbox around me, because you can't see it, but I've got bookshelves on either side of me because I love resources. A couple of my strengths, I'm a learner. My top 5 strengths: Gallup's a futuristic, input learner, responsibility, and what is it? I have and an achiever. So that learner and input bring me all of these tools. And so working with different clients, I have some that I use quite often, but I change it up. It's not always the same thing. And I love that, because I'm not a cookie cutter type of person. But one thing that's going to become something I use with all my clients is this book. It's how to get the most out of coaching. So whether you've gone through coaching before, you've never gone through coaching, it's just a tiny little book, but it's such a great reference in order to get the most out of your coaching, so that you are, coming prepared. You're adding buffer time before. In fact, what Daniel and I did right before this is we had a little breathing session. We got grounded. We made sure that we were here and we were present for you guys. And so I encourage my clients to have that buffer before and that buffer after, so that they are able to do their homework. They can start to put that calendar together of, when am I going to do these things I said I was going to get done? Making sure that they understand that they choose the agenda. This is based on what's important to them. And so coming prepared, feel like a little bit of a school teacher. Did you come prepared to our class? But they are getting the most out of it. They're paying good money for this. And I want to see them grow and to expand and to get things out of it. So lots of great tips. Myself as a coach, myself as a client, I see great things. So that's one thing that I think is great, for them. I've got some excerpts I share with my clients as well too.
So I
Yeah.
put that in the chat, and I just want to remind people that if you subscribe to our channel, you can actually join our live chat here during our live broadcast. And if you are watching this after the live broadcast has gone out, we would love to see your comments in the comment section about what inspires you today. What other tools do you use as a coach?
Yeah. So like I said, I work at the intersection of career and life. You know, people say, are you a career coach? Yes. Are you a life coach? Yes. Are you a wellness coach? Yes. So what I love to remind people of is that our personal and our professional life are mirror images of one another. So, you know, if one's off, maybe the other end is off too, because they're just never equal. It's like they really reflect on one another. I like to say when, you know, people use that all the time, work-life balance. And I said, well, I see it more like a puzzle. Like, what's Daniel's puzzle? What's Lynell's puzzle? What's really important to us? What are our values? So we look at a wheel of life, which a lot of people are familiar with that, but it helps us to really see kind of what's out of balance for us. I give the analogy too, when you kind of draw the lines between the numbers on this wheel of life chart, you can see it's kind of like, you know, you're off kilter. Like if you were in kind of a stagecoach, if you're riding down the road, you're like bumpity bumpity bump. So
Yeah.
that's a really important one. I love to use the Energy Leadership Index Assessment, which is something that Daniel and I both have been trained through IPEC on. Really helps us to see those energy levels, the seven energy levels, and what brings out the best in us and what really doesn't, and just how they show up for us. Um, we use an ideal image tool that shows really kind of if I'm looking for a new job, what am I looking for? If I'm one of my clients is she's looking for an internship right now. She's in college, and so we'll look at this of what's really important to her. What are you passionate about? What do you want to include and what don't you want to include? Like the older I get, the more I'm very clear on where my boundaries are and when I will work and when I won't work. Um, you know, there's just like I said, there's different tools. Like I have this one book I pulled from this grief recovery handbook. You know, I'm not a grief recovery coach. I've gone through lots of loss in my life, so I understand this one. But really, we'll go through a process where they'll, you know, write this letter about apologies, forgiveness, significant emotional statements, and releasing and letting go. And whether that at the end of it is, you know, they read it out loud to me, and what they do with that afterwards is not share it with the person they wrote it about, but they could tear it up, they could burn it, they can get rid of it. So that's a powerful one. And again, since I have all these resources, I like to share excerpts from books with people so they can go, okay, I really love some of the topics of like atomic habits. That's when I reference a lot of times too, just this high idea of habit stacking. So if you were going to get coffee every morning and you wanted to take your vitamins, so put your vitamins by your coffee, you know, because you're always going to get your coffee. So put your vitamins there. Essentialism, this is a big one I focus on a lot too, is like what's essential, what's not essential. Like get rid of that stuff that's no longer lighting you up, that you don't really enjoy. And so that's the essentialism, like setting those boundaries. And there's a book called Boundaries. That's another thing too. When I work with women, a lot of times we have a struggle juggling all of these and pushing things out that no longer make sense. We don't want to hear, or they don't bring us joy. They're not a priority. So these are just some of my top ones.
Yeah, we just did a recent episode on expectations and turning those expectations into healthy boundaries. Um, yeah, so that is amazing. Linnell, if you were to, so you've learned a lot of this stuff in your life, kind of by living it, right? And
Mhm.
that's how you learn the best lessons, right? Is by doing it the hard way. But if you got the chance to go back and to give a bit of advice to your younger self, what would that advice look like?
Yeah, yeah, I feel like I live that every day. Being a mom of three daughters, two are teenagers now, it's kind of this live and learn and pass it on and pass it forward. Because you know, once you know better, you do better, and all of those different things. Um, but yeah, I think the first is getting to know yourself, really getting to know yourself. You know, working with younger women, I love that because I'm seeing such ahas and awareness of like this is who they are. I don't give myself credit for having known myself quite that well, especially my 16-year-old. She's really quite self-aware at this point. Maybe it's maybe it's the influence of working with her mom every day and being in this household. But you know what you value, know what matters most to you. You know, before getting into a relationship, before getting married, before having children. So really getting to know you. I think you'll just make wiser choices in your career and the partner that you choose or don't choose, decide to stay alone. So, and the biggest thing too is stop trying to do it alone. Stop trying to do it by yourself. You know, we are not made to be in isolation. We are made to be in relationship, and that's the biggest thing. So, you know, my changes and transitions in life and career, I mean, it was kind of a little bit like that dark cave, you know, trying to find the bear. I didn't know what I was looking for. My sister passed away very young in her 40s, and so that was the impetus for me to hit my valley and say, I'm out of HR, out of corporate, because I don't know what's next for me. And it was very lonely, and I just kind of find my way through the dark. And that's my biggest gift, I think, is just having the empathy and understanding when other people are going through that, because I've been there myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, yeah, I think part of it is just, you know, you lose your identity. You know, sometimes when you have a change of career, you know, for me, I realized a decade later I had this loss of identity when I left corporate HR. And so I was grieving that, and I was also grieving the loss of my sister. So those were big things for me. Um, One quote I love, and it's actually on my tagline for my email, is, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I absolutely believe that people have this passion, this energy to change the world. And so it's their job to go live it. And it's my job to help bring it out.
Yeah. If you wanted to consolidate your entire presentation to us today um, into just a few sound bites, what would that sound like?
Hmm. So I would say that it's stop and reflect and get quiet. Give yourself some time to figure out what's important for you. Something, a practice I've been working on getting into recently, is just journaling 5 minutes. I had a friend challenge me. She said, just set a timer for 5 minutes, and you'll be astounded at 5 minutes later, like you're like, oh, it went by in a flash. And just these ideas, this creative flow. When I do that, I'm like kind of wild at myself, because I think that if we give ourselves time to be quiet, because we're so busy, but again, just get to know yourself, get quiet, help, you know, yourself to figure out what's important. And again, don't do it alone. Find somebody to help you, because you'll go quicker together.
Yeah. And find someone that fits, that resonates with you,
Yeah,
that
that's,
echoes your
yeah.
journey, but
Hmm.
that doesn't think that they have all the answers and knows the exact way to go, because no one's going to live your life better than you.
Absolutely.
Um,
You have the answers within.
yeah.
We just bring them out.
Well, you can tell we're both IPEC coaches.
Yep, yep. Yeah, we're vibing on the same level right now.
Yeah, we are. Well, listen, Lynell, thank you so much for being on our show today. And audience, I want to also express my gratitude for you sticking around with us and listening to our show, watching the video in the future. Once you've done that, and once you've taken the time to watch the video, you could do us a huge favor by logging into YouTube, subscribing to our channel, and liking this video. And if you wanted to go one step further, we love to see comments, especially ones that are about the way that we've inspired you, because our motto is that together we inspire. And we'll be back next week with more about life coaching, and I will see you then. Bye.
Bye.